Hi students, welcome to session 1 of Respiration in Organisms. In today's session, we will study about respiratory system. So students, let us start with today's interesting session and study about respiratory system. Students, if you bring your hand near your nose, you would feel warm air coming out from your nose at short intervals. Even if you observe a dog sleeping, you would be able to make out a regular upward and downward movement of its body. So, what does this movement indicate? Yes, it shows that the animal is breathing in and breathing out. So there are a number of organs involved in this process, and this makes up a system named respiratory system. Its main function is to allow exchange of gases. So this respiratory system is found in all living organisms, though with varying levels of complexity. Remember students, every single person in the world needs to breathe. Breathing air is necessary for keeping humans and many animals and other organisms alive. And the two parts in our body that are large and in charge when it comes to breathing are our lungs. Yes. Our lungs make up one of the largest organs in our body, and they work with the respiratory system to allow us to take in fresh air, get rid of the stale air, and even talk. So, let's take a tour of the respiratory system. Yes, students, all living organisms are made up of a number of cells. And each of these cells require oxygen. Yes, students. So why do these cells require oxygen? Yes, they require oxygen to break down food and obtain energy. Students, we have learned that all organisms are made up of small microscopic units called cells. So remember students that a cell is the smallest structural and functional unit of an organism. And each cell of an organism performs certain functions such as nutrition, transport, excretion, reproduction, respiration. So to perform these functions, the cell needs energy. Even when we are eating, sleeping, or reading, we require energy. But where does this energy come from? Can you say why your parents insist that you should eat regularly? They say because the food has stored energy which is released during respiration, and therefore all living organisms respire to get energy from food. During breathing, we breathe in air. We know that air contains oxygen, and we breathe out air which is rich in carbon dioxide. So the air we breathe in is transported to all the parts of the body and ultimately to each cell. In the cells, oxygen in the air helps in the breakdown of food. That is why we can say that all living organisms are made up of a number of cells, and each of these cells require oxygen to break down food and obtain energy. So this intake of air which is rich in oxygen is called inhalation or breathing in, and this is the first step in the process of respiration. After that, it involves a series of chemical reactions which help in the release of energy, where several enzymes and catalysts are also involved in this process. Enzymes and catalysts means they are the substances that speed up the reactions. So, whenever the components of food are broken down, water and carbon dioxide are formed as products. So students, always remember that respiratory system or the process of this respiration, it consists of the process of inhalation and exhalation. So we studied about inhalation. But what is exhalation? Yes. We know that carbon dioxide is very toxic to the body, so it has to be moved out. So this removal of carbon dioxide, that means The exhalation or breathing out of the air which is rich in carbon dioxide completes the cycle. So this inhalation and exhalation, they both combine to form this process of respiration. One more thing which I would like to share with you students is that we know that the air we breathe in is transported to all parts of the body and ultimately to each cell. And in the cells, oxygen in the air helps in the breakdown of food. Right? So, remember that the breakdown of food in the cell with the release of energy is termed as cellular respiration. Right? So this process of the breakdown of food in the cell with the release of energy is termed as cellular respiration, because the process of this respiration is taking place in the cell. Therefore, it is termed as cellular respiration. So cellular respiration takes place in the cells of all organisms. In the cell, the food, that is glucose, is broken down into some products using oxygen. So we will study about that in the later sessions. Before that, we need to study one more thing. Yes, the fundamental difference between breathing and respiration. So what is the fundamental difference between breathing and respiration? Yes, breathing is the process of intake of air which is rich in oxygen, which is also termed as inhalation or breathing in, and giving out air rich in carbon dioxide, which is also termed as exhalation or breathing out. Whereas respiration is the process of releasing energy from the breakdown of food. So students, we need to study more differences about breathing and respiration. So what are other differences? Yes, breathing brings in oxygen, which is usually necessary for cellular respiration in our lungs, whereas respiration is the release of energy from food, usually in the form of sugar or glucose. So it is a chemical reaction which takes place inside all the living cells. Another difference about breathing is that it is the process by which air is drawn into and out of the lungs. So students, what happens in this process exactly? Yes, when air is in the lungs, oxygen is taken into the body, and the oxygen is then used during respiration to burn the food, releasing its energy. So what happens when the food burns? Yes, it produces waste carbon dioxide. But now, this carbon dioxide is toxic to our body, so it needs to be removed out. So this carbon dioxide or CO2 is passed out of the body from the lungs when we breathe out. So we can say that respiration and breathing are connected with each other, but they are not the same thing. So now, let us discuss some of the very important points of the difference between breathing and respiration. Yes, students. So the first point, the first difference between breathing and respiration is, this is the first point about breathing, and it is the process of inhalation and exhalation. Whereas respiration, it is a series of chemical reactions that result in the release of energy by the oxidation of food molecules. Whereas in breathing, there are no chemical reactions taking place. But only an exchange of gases is involved. So basically, we can say that breathing is a physical process while respiration is a chemical process. Now that was the first difference. The second difference between breathing and respiration is that here no enzymes or catalysts are involved. While in respiration, as it is a chemical process, enzymes and other catalysts are involved in the whole process. Another difference is that no energy is released during this process. Whereas energy is released in this process. One more basic difference between breathing and respiration is that in breathing, this process takes place outside the cells, while in respiration, this process takes place inside the cells. So these are some of the very important differences between breathing and respiration. So students, one more thing we should know about breathing is that breathing is sometimes divided into two stages, that is ventilation and gas exchange. Now ventilation here means, what does ventilation means? Yes, ventilation means the movement of air in and out of the lungs, whereas gas exchange is also the one of the stage of breathing process. Gas exchange means the absorption of oxygen from the lungs and release of carbon dioxide into the lungs is known as gas exchange. So breathing on the basis of these stages is sometimes called external respiration, and respiration is sometimes called internal or cellular respiration. So there is also aerobic and anaerobic respiration, which we will study in the later sessions. So students, we now came to know that in the cell, the food or glucose is broken down into carbon dioxide and water using oxygen. So when the breakdown of glucose occurs with the use of oxygen, what it is called as? It is named, or it is termed by some name. Even when food is broken down without the oxygen, that is also one of the process of respiration. That is also one type of respiration. So we will study about these types of respiration in later sessions. I hope you are clear with the introduction to respiratory system. Now let us move on to another topic. So students, after studying about the introduction to respiratory system, now let us study about a respiratory system in animals so that we can better understand the process of respiration in organisms. So let us start with the respiratory system in animals. Students, animals such as elephants, lions, cows, snakes, birds, lizards, frogs, goats, etc. have lungs in their chest cavities like the human beings. So how do these organisms breathe? Do they also have lungs like those of human beings? Let us see. Do insects have the same thing? They do have the same organs like us? Let us find it out. Yes, students, the need to take in oxygen and expel carbon dioxide or releasing out of carbon dioxide is almost universal among organisms. The movement of these gases between an organism and its environment, called gas exchange, which we studied, that it is one of the part of breathing process, ventilation and gas exchange. So the movement of these gases between an organism and its environment, called gas exchange, is accomplished in a variety of ways by different organisms. So there are different processes in different organisms, like in unicellular aquatic organisms such as protozoans, and in seaweeds, sponges, jellyfish and other aquatic organisms that are only a few cell layers thick. Oxygen and carbon dioxide diffuse directly between the water and cells. Even in higher organisms or in higher animals, there are special organs that help in breathing and respiration. So, animals breathe in many ways, which we are going to study in today's session. They can breathe in many ways, like they can breathe through skin. They can also breathe through air holes. They can also breathe through gills. And there are some organisms that breathe through lungs. So we are going to study about the animals which breathe in these 4 ways, right? So let us see the first one. Yes, the animals that breathe through skin. Now students, we know that the earliest development of these gas exchange structures is seen in roundworms, microscopic invertebrates which are abundant in water and moist soil. So which are the organisms, or which are the animals that breathe through skin? Yes, in animals such as earthworms and leeches, exchange of gases takes place through the moist and slimy surface of the skin. So what actually happens in such organisms? Yes, in amphibians such as frogs, newts and salamanders, the exchange of gases takes place through the skin when they are in water, and in addition to the lungs when they are on land. So this is one amazing thing about amphibians. Other than that, there are animals or there are organisms that breathe through air holes, like some of the insects. Insects have a unique respiratory system which is made up of small tubes called trachea. So this trachea connect all parts of the body to small openings called spiracles on the surface of the insect. So basically there is one insect called cockroach. Here you can see a cockroach has small openings on the sides of its body. Even other insects have similar openings. So these openings are called spiracles. Insects have a network of air tubes called trachea for gas exchange, where oxygen-rich air rushes through spiracles into the tracheal tubes and it diffuses into the body tissue and reaches every cell of the body, every cell of the cockroach and other insects too. Similarly, carbon dioxide from the cell goes into the tracheal tubes and moves out through spiracles. So, these air tubes or trachea are found only in insects and not in any other group of animals. So here you can see there are some pair of spiracles called as thoracic spiracles. And the back portion of this cockroach have some small openings called spiracles. They are termed as abdominal spiracles because they are located at such position. So they are termed as thoracic spiracles and these are termed as abdominal spiracles in cockroach. So students, remember that the oxygen and carbon dioxide are transported through the trachea and from the trachea to the blood of the insect by the process of diffusion. So blood of most insects is contained in an open circulatory system and is moved around the internal organs by a heart. So basically, in cockroaches, air enters the respiratory systems of cockroaches through a series of external openings called spiracles. And these external openings, which act as muscular valves, lead to an internal respiratory system and a densely networked array of tubes called trachea. So what happens that the tracheal system with an individual, or here in terms of cockroach we are talking, so the tracheal system with the cockroach within an individual is composed of interconnecting transverse and longitudinal trachea, which maintains the equivalent pressure throughout the system, so that this oxygen-rich air rushes through the spiracles into the tracheal tubes, and the trachea branch repeatedly, eventually forming tracheoles are blind-ended, water-filled compartments which vary only 1 micrometer or which has a size of 1 micrometer in diameter. So it is at this level of the tracheoles that oxygen is delivered to all the cells for respiration by following diffusion into the body tissue. Remember students that insects were once believed to exchange gases with the environment continuously by the simple diffusion of gases into the tracheal system. And more recently, however, large variations in insect ventilatory patterns have been documented and insect respiration appears to be a highly variable. So there are some small insects that do demonstrate continuous respiration and may lack muscular control of the spiracles. And other insects, however, other animals utilize muscular contraction of the abdomen along with coordinated spiracle contraction and relaxation to generate cyclic gas exchange patterns. So this is what happens in insects, particularly in cockroaches. Whereas what we studied in the breathing system through skin in animals such as earthworms, the earthworms breathe through their skins. Gases can easily pass through their skins. So earthworms rely on their moist bodies for oxygen to diffuse into the blood circulating near the surface of their skin. And the reason that earthworms come to the surface when the ground is water saturated is because it needs the air circulating in the soil, not just like cockroaches. The earthworms need the air circulating in the soil to diffuse enough oxygen into their blood. So earthworms do not have a respiratory system such as we have or the cockroaches have. They have very thin skin and they can exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide through their skin. Now this was all about the breathing through air holes and skin. But have you ever gave a thought that how do fishes respire? How is oxygen carbon dioxide exchanged in their organs? Let us study about them. Yes, animals that breathe through gills. Now students, we know that adult fish have a pair of gills and each gill is covered by a bony lid so that a fish can draw in water by closing the lid over its gills and opening its mouth. So when the fish closes its mouth and opens the gill lid, the water is forced out and over the respiratory surfaces of the gill filaments. How amazing it is! How amazingly it works! Right? So, fishes are such that can survive in water. Can we survive in water? No. There are many organisms which live in water. So how do they breathe underwater? Yes. Gills provide a more extensive surface area for gas exchange than the body surface alone, like the terrestrial animals. But aquatic animals have gills because they enable such organisms like clams. Clam is also one of the aquatic animal, and there are other larger organisms too that have gills, which provides a more extensive surface area for gas exchange to obtain the amount of oxygen they need. So fish have gills, they have a heart and a closed circulatory system, one in which blood is transported in vessels by the pumping action of the heart. So now let us see that what is present in the fish. Here you can see gills in fish. Yes, what you can see here, these are all gills in fish, and here you can see series of this longitudinal pattern in fish. All these are filaments. So we will study about these breathing organs in fish now. Yes, students, most aquatic animals such as fishes use special organs called gills for breathing, right? We saw it in the diagram. Yes, so these gills are like slits, and they are made up of a large number of thread-like structures called filaments. And these filaments are richly supplied with tiny blood vessels called capillaries. So, the gills in fish help them to use oxygen which is dissolved in water. Gills are projections of the skin of fish. You may wonder how gills help in breathing, but yes, gills are well supplied with blood vessels for exchange of gases. And that is why they are able to breathe. So what exactly happens in fishes? Yes, when water enters the body of the fish through the mouth, it flows over the gills, and the blood in the capillaries absorb oxygen. It actually absorbs oxygen from the water and gives out carbon dioxide. So in this way, this oxygen is transported by the blood of the fish, and that is why they are able to breathe through gills. Another process is that of breathing through lungs. Now we are done through the breathing in animals through skin, through air holes, and through gills. Now this is also one of the most important one, the animals or the organisms that breathe through lungs. Students, most mammals such as cats, dogs, monkeys, horses, human beings, etc. breathe with the help of special sac-like spongy organ called lungs. There are baby frogs too, like tadpoles. They also breathe through gills, though they breathe through skin and lungs when they grow up to become frogs or adult frogs. So, these are some of the animals that breathe through lungs. Even we human beings breathe through lungs. So we will study about the respiratory system in humans in next session. I hope you liked today's session and you learned much about respiration in many organisms. So students, we will meet in the next session. Till then, keep learning, keep enjoying, and have a nice time.